Hey, good to see you. Good afternoon, good day, good whatever the hell it is. Who's reviewing what? Okay. Oh, okay. I don't know. Someone sent me a message about reviewing my Twitter account for verification or something. All right. Good to see you all for the first time today. For the first time, it's really nice to see you all. It's been a long 24 hours since I've seen you all. I can't believe it's been that long. Uh, let's let's keep going. It's been a long day, guys. It's been a long day. Let me take you over. Let's go to the evidence from Eppingstall. I want to move away from the other notes for a minute. I want to go back to this version of my notes for Eppingstall's cross exam today because I think there's some stuff in here we can talk about. Give me a second. Let me go here. Here. So what came up early this morning was they were talking about the very early time in the investigation. I rest well? I don't know if I rested well, but yes, I guess I did. Let me get this set up. All right. So they were talking here, and this is the cross exam of Stephen Eppingstall, Mr. Mandy, Colin Mandy SC. And they're talking about how the police briefed the media early on, like we're talking like the 1st of August around then. And this is like I knew they did this, but I never knew what it was actually called until I heard it in court today. And I was like, oh, is that what they call this thing? So if you've ever seen a case that's come out and it's very early on, and you'll see that every media outlet will have the same little paragraph of information. And you're like, I really want to know more about this, but every bloody media has the same information on every page, right? Well, they told us what it was called. I had no idea, like, because I'm not a journalist as such. I don't work for a paper, so I wouldn't know. But apparently, and I'll read the thing to you here. So they say next topic is the issue of media, and this is Colin Mandy. You are aware and were aware that from very early on in this investigation, there was a significant media interest, and the detective says yes, there was, and they said to the point that passwords were put in place at hospitals because of the media interest in this case. And he says yes, and they said, what's a holding line? And he replies, yeah, so a holding line, you would have heard of them. You'd recognize them if you saw them. They're those little short blurbs that go out to the media that just let people know the very basic details of an incident. You know, like police have arrested a person in relation to this incident in this town, but it's a very generic statement. So I'd never heard of what they're actually called before. We may have lost connection or something. There's thunderstorms and things like that happens, tech issues. Still, they followed us back from Morwell. Tech issues over, new camera, things like that. Something happened. It just died, disappeared. So they're talking about this holding line, and they say, yeah, police have arrested a person. So a very generic statement. So that's what that's called. If you've ever heard of that, I've never heard of that before in my life. I don't even know what that is. I've seen them before, but I didn't know it had a name. So it's called sort of like we always talk about them, a holding charge. So a holding charge is where they have someone they're interested in for a particular crime, but they don't have enough to charge them with that crime. So they sort of dig up anything they can find to keep them in custody, a parking ticket, an old break and enter charge, something from 4 years ago, anything to keep them in custody for a while longer while they investigate. So that's why the wording reminds me of that. So a holding statement or a holding, sounds very similar to the other one. Uh, yeah. So a holding line is what they call it in the police, and it's literally just tells you the very basic details of it. And it says here, by the 5th of August, the mainstream media was reporting on these events. And he says, yes, well and truly they were. And they said there was a media release put out by VicPol on the 6th of August. And he says, yes, that is correct. And they say the media release confirmed to the media and therefore the wider public that the homicide squad was involved in the deaths. And he says, yes, that is correct. Then he says there was a briefing note in relation to the 6th of August, which says media consulted throughout and media holding lines utilized significant media coverage on the 6th of August 2023 and management to be ongoing. And he says, yes, sir. And then he says Colin Andy says there was a press conference on Monday, the 7th of August, where Detective Inspector Dean Thomas conducted a press briefing. And he says, yes, he did. And they said by that time, media was already camped outside of Erin Patterson's address. And he says, I'm aware of that, yes. And they say, also including inside her property, they did go inside her property. Yes, he replies. And he says, okay. All right. So that's a bit about the media. I wanted to talk to you about that because a lot of these sort of things, I had no idea they had names. I just thought they were just things they did. I was like, all right, it's just things they do. But they have names apparently. So that's the important bit right there about these sort of names for it. And he says here, media consulted throughout and media holding lines utilized significant media coverage on the 6th of August 2023 and management to be ongoing. And that's when a day later on the 7th was that first big press conference by homicide or Victorian police. And that's Detective Inspector Dean Thomas. So he does a lot of the press conferences in Victoria and on behalf of Victoria Police. If you've ever watched a big press conference in Victoria, you would have seen Dean Thomas. He's been in hundreds of different press conferences for many different cases, including Erin Patterson. So, all right. So that's what we sort of got a lot of today was this cross exam. And they talk more about these. I don't want to talk about that. What is here? So a subject that gets a lot of mention today was Cellbrite. They they talk about this Cellbrite software, and Eppingstall was saying that the Homicide Squad actually has a kiosk version of Cellbrite. But he was saying that when he had one of the phones, I believe it was Simon's phone, he had tried to plug it into the kiosk, but it didn't work. And it wasn't until the cyber team became involved that it worked. And he says that Homicide do have a certain level of training in Cellbrite, but it's not as high as the cybercrime or cyber team. They actually have a much higher understanding of how Cellbrite works, and they have much more advanced tooling to be able to use it. And it wasn't until the phone went to them that they were able to get information off it. I just want to make sure whose phone that was. Hold on. Yeah. So he says, and is it the case, this is Colin Mandy, on the 12th of September 2023 that that phone, that is Simon's phone, was downloaded by Cellbrite for analysis? And he replies, on the 6th of August, he gave me the phone and I tried to do it via the kiosk that we possess in Homicide Squad, and I was unable to do that. And he says, given that his parents had just passed away and there was a lot of family stuff and child protection stuff going on, we gave him back his phone to let him continue. and then he reattended on the 12th of September, and then it was done via our cybercrime team using Cellbrite products. And I just want to see if they go further into. Yeah, so they were just saying that he was basically saying that when he tried it on this kiosk version, it just didn't work. For some reason, it didn't work, and it wasn't until he sent it to the cyber team that they actually got into the phone and were able to do this like full backup of Simon's phone. Maybe it was an iPhone or something. I know iPhones are a little problematic with Cellbrite. I don't know what. I don't think they tell us the model. Let me have a look. Who's messaging me? Someone just pinged my account. What's going on? Nothing. All right. Good. Don't be messaging me. Don't be messaging me for like the next 3.5 days. No one do that. All right. Robert says, hello, folks. Hello. Good to see you for the first time today. All right. No, that's not the right set of notes. Okay, here. Yeah, so they talk about this, the Simon's phone, and let me tell you a bit more about it. They went into a property. Yep, we went through that. We talked about that. So I'm just trying to see if they go further into this Cellbrite thing, because I wanted to see what they're. Yeah, so one of the things that was admitted and shown to the jury today was a cybercrime Cellbrite record for Simon Patterson's phone. So we were shown that today. It just looks like any other type of report type of thing. And there's a very specific question that I want to. Yeah, so here they say they ask him, Eppingstall, have you done the Cellbrite course? And he replies, I've done a Cellbrite course, sir. There's multiple Cellbrite courses and multiple levels, and the cybercrime have a higher level of Cellbrite than what homicide do. So he's explaining that the one that they have is not as detailed or as easy to access. Hey, good to see you, 1972. And they say here, yeah, have you done the course? And they ask him, you would understand that a full file system extraction means to extract the contents of the device. And he says, yes, that is correct. They say, and all of the contents of the device. And Eppingstall replies, that is what I would expect to be downloaded if he's ticked that box. And he says, but keep in mind, this form is independent of the Cellbrite system and software. So he ticked this on a form, and it isn't what generates the download. So he's saying, well, who knows what they put on a form? It doesn't come directly from the software. It's not a autofill type thing. And what do they say here? That the total from the extraction of that device was 106 gigabytes of data. And he says that is correct. And they ask, which is a reasonable amount of data? And he says, yes, I would agree with that. And they said, but the only thing you extracted out of that phone was messages. And he says, yes. And they said, is because that is all you were seeking from the phone. And he says, yeah, that's all I asked for. And they say, those messages comprised of about 280 text messages between Simon and Erin. And he says, I don't know, I'd have to count it, but I'll accept that's what it is. And they say, well, what about 70 pages? And he goes, yeah, like that sounds about right. And he goes, no, the report was about 70 pages long. And he says, yeah, it wasn't a lot of data, no. And so Yeah, they just said it was about 280 text messages. That's all they wanted out of 106 gigabytes of data. They wanted just the text messages, 280 or so text messages. And if you know anything about anything that's text, like Word document or whatever, 280 text messages is not very big. It'd probably be in the kilobytes. It may be a megabyte. You can store a lot of data, uh, like text data, within megabytes and kilobytes. You don't need gigabytes of data. So out of 106 gigabytes, they took like very very small amounts of anything, just the text messages. So Mike, I can't put that up on the screen. I get what you're saying though. And they're just saying here, uh, you understand from the evidence that there are signal chats between Simon and Erin, and he says yes. Also in a group message of Simon, Erin, Don, and Gail, and he says yes. And they say also another set in a group which was the wider Patterson family, and he replies, yeah, but there were multiple groups, like group messages. And they say, then we moved to Gail and Don Patterson, and you got those phones, as you said, from Simon on the 6th of August. And he says, yep. And he said, was Gail's phone examined? And he says, yes. And they say, we have some of those text messages from that phone. We've got some of the text messages in evidence from that phone. And he says, we do, yes. They said, did you make any inquiries as to whether or not that phone contained any signal messages? And he replies, I believe we got a full extraction of Gail's phone. I'd have to go back to the file. I can't remember about any signal messages. They say, what about Don's phone? And he says, Don's phone from memory was it was fairly empty. I don't think he really used his phone much. That's my recollection. And they say, on that date, he told you about the Signal group chats, didn't he? And he says, we sat down. You've got to appreciate that I've had a lot of conversations with Simon, sir. He did 85 paragraphs of his statement that day. And if it was in that, then I'll agree, but I can't recall. And then it says, okay, Colomandy says, okay, it's in that. And then he replies, okay, then he did tell me, sir, yeah. So basically the cop was saying, I've spoken to Simon so many times about so many different things. I have no idea what he told me on what day because we've spoken about a lot of different subjects in a very small amount of time. So, but they said it was in that statement that Simon gave. So he lives in the land of free sport on public TV. That's where he lives. All right. And they say here, and they say, and he indicated to you in December of 2022, there was an issue that arose in relation to child support. And they said, I thought it could have been earlier than that. That's all that they said on that. Da, 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 da. All right. So they move on to this subject and they start talking about travel distances and times to Outram and Lock. They start Colomandy starts quizzing him on these time frames. Hold on. Yeah, so they start. Hold on, guys. What's going on? Hold on, guys. Give me one sec. I gotta fix something. I noticed something popped up. Hold on. Hold on. Hold on. Hold on. All right. We're good. All right, there we go. All right. And they say here, you've also given some evidence about visits. Well, your visits, and he says, but travel distances and times to Outram and Lock. And Eppingstall replies, yeah, I have done those trips there. Yeah. And they said, Colomandy asked him, did you take all of the alternate routes? And Eppingstall replies, I've driven backwards and forwards between Leongatha and Outram a number of different ways. Yeah. And they said, all right, well, do you accept that travel times might vary depending on the route that you take? Obviously, enough. And he says, yep. And he says, I think I said that in my evidence in chief. Yes, sir. And they said, if we are talking about from Gibson Street in Leongatha to Nielsen Street in Outram, between 18 to 24 minutes, depending on the route you take. And he says, yes, sir, that's about fair. And they say, from a certain number in Gibson Street to Leongatha to Lock, where the suspension bridge is, between 24 and 29 minutes, depending on the route you take. He says, yeah, I think that is about 23 minutes, but that was just from the Leongatha Township. I didn't go to Gibson that day, so yeah, that would be accurate. And they say here, yeah, I'll read this bit to you. So, and it says, did Dr. Sorrell tell you when you were briefing him to conduct a phone tag analysis and that he had the capacity to factor in travel time into his analysis and opinion? And they ask, is this in relation to a line of search offer or something different? And then Colomendi says, no, that's just a simple proposition. And he said, look, I've got the capacity to factor in travel time into my analysis as to the potential visits if you'd like me to. And the detective replies, yeah, look, Professor Sorrell likes to upsell some of those things. So we've got to be careful with what we tell him. And so we don't want to give the evidence to be tainted or look biased. So we give him very little instructions. And we were very specific on this occasion that we weren't looking for that. We were just looking for the visits. And then Colomandy asks, what about the line of sight examination? And he says, yeah, that. Yeah, he was trying to upsell that to us a fair bit. We weren't sure, sir, if that had been tested or not in court. And we didn't think it was necessary on this occasion to try and test that. Colomandy says, well, it's fairly important, isn't it? Eppingstall replies, well, I don't think the science has been proven yet in Australia. I've never heard that before. That line of sight cell phone tower testing had never been tested legally, like in a court setting in Australia before. I know they do it in America. It's done quite frequently. They use line of sight and other types of tech on the towers to be able to do other types of analysis. That's very different to some of the things we may have seen in other trials here. But I'd never heard that line of sight had never been legally tested in a court of law in Australia. But there you go. And they say it's just a matter of common sense, isn't it? If you can see a tower, then you're more likely to get a connection to that tower unless the tower is over a hill and you can't see it. And he says, yeah, Professor Sorrell explained that. And they say, so it's not a difficult, Colomandy says, it's not a difficult proposition. It is just common sense proposition, isn't it? And he says, I would have thought so, yeah. And they say, he said to you, I can do that analysis to see or not if there is a line of sight. And Eppingstall replies, yes. And then Colomandy says, but you said, no, don't worry about it. And Eppingstall says, I said we're not interested at this stage. And then Colomandy says, do you accept that line of sight analysis goes to the question of whether or not the visits were actually possible within the timeframes? And he says, I'm trying to understand that the proposition that the line of sight, can you ask that question again? And he asks, is it important to know where a handset is in relation to a tower? And he says, Eppingstall replies, yes. They say, in order to conduct the travel time analysis that you did. And he says, yes. And they say, if you want to rely on something as being a potential visit to a place. And then they say, then travel time is important. And he says, yes. And they say, as in line of sight. And then Eppingstall replies, oh, it can be, but line of sight doesn't guarantee a connection either. I've got a lot of experience in radio waves, and that was from the army. Putting that aside, I have an understanding of how things can move through terrain, and sometimes you'll get a connection, and sometimes you won't. It doesn't necessarily require line of sight, is my understanding of it. So I'm not sure if it was going to be helpful. And Colin Mandy says, not important to find out whether it was going to be helpful, though. And he says, well, like I said. And they say, from your perspective. And he says, if I could, if there was scientific testing that would give me exact distance from towers and the like, we would have explored it. I assure you, we just weren't comfortable with the science and that it hadn't been tested to our understanding at the time. I never heard that it had never been tested line of sight or distance from towers. So some places can do distance analysis from towers and line of sight testing. I find that interesting that they were very worried about the legalities of it. I would have to look that up where that has been if someone has tried to bring it into a courtroom since 2023. I'd have to look up the legal thing for it. But I had no idea that no one's done that here before, because you see it all the time in other trials, especially in the US. In the US, they use this type, especially with the CAST team. So the CAST team that works for the FBI, they do this type of analysis quite regularly, and it is often brought into court cases. So, somewhat of a legality point here. Can't say I've ever seen that brought up before, but there you go. Line of sight testing, not ever legally tested in an Australian courtroom at the time. But interesting. And they say here. So they say to him, um, Dr. Sorrell gave evidence about line of sight as being an important factor. And Eppingstall replies, yes, he did, yeah. And they say, and you say, well, I can discount that part of his analysis because I'm not you and I'm not sure of the science. And Eppingstall says, oh, it doesn't just come down to me. These decisions are made high up. If I want to engage Professor Sorrell, I have to front a meeting that is a commander at Victorian Police, and so I have to justify any usage of him, any expenditure on him, and these decisions are made well along the chain. He says, I want everything. I'm greedy. I'm the informant. I want everything. I don't get everything all the time, sir, but I understand his decision and I'll own this decision. So there you go. He's basically saying that sometimes it comes down to a cost analysis where when they take the case higher up the chain, they're like, no, you can't have $350,000 to do cell phone analysis. They're like, you can't have all of that. And they actually go on to explain about EBM, which is event based tracking of phones. So event EB is event based. He talks about how the price is really expensive for just like an hour or two. Like it can be many, many thousands of dollars. And he said, I can't remember what the time frame was. Was it like, I can't remember if it was, I think he tried to say if it was for like a year. He said if you wanted a year of EBM data from a phone, he's like, you're talking like six figures just for the EBM data from a cell phone, one cell phone. And he's talking like six figures for a year's worth of data. and he says that's why they're quite focused on certain time frames, like an hour here, half an hour there, a few hour, between 1 and 3, not just hey, we'll get the records for the entire of 2024 because they can't do that for every case. They can't afford it. Six figures for just EBM data. And he says the price has come down. He said it used to be a lot more expensive, but recently it has sort of softened. And I'll get you that exact quote. Why does my phone keep going off like someone is messaging me? It's so weird. It's really strange. It's like someone keeps pinging my Twitter, like Twitter message, like private message, but when I go there's no one there. It's really strange. I thought someone was saying that I was talking about the wrong day or something. All right. Let me see if I can find it. So they talk about yeah, I don't want to talk about that bit. Hmm. Hold on. I just want to check what this is called. No, I don't think that's all right. Hmm. Something in my notes tells me that I might have done a typo here where it says EBN. I'm pretty sure it's EBM, but I could be wrong. Maybe I got it wrong last time and this time I got it right. Who knows? But it says here, I'll call it event-based data so that we all know what we're talking about. He says, okay, they talk about how EB data in this particular case had a potential to change the opinion of Dr. Sorrell because he got the EBM or EBN data later on. And it says, in relation, yeah, in relation to the data, hold on. Yeah. In relation to the EBN data in this case, you obtained it for a handful of days in the relevant period. And he says that is correct. Colin Mandy asks, is there a reason why event based data wasn't obtained for all of the days in the relevant period? And he says, yes. A very good reason is it's very cost prohibitive. Event based data or EBN, EBM when they first came out a couple of years ago, they were about $1,700 for just 2 hours. He says, I know that prices come down a fair bit, but to get it for a period of a year, we'd be talking well into the six figures. And he goes, my boss isn't real keen when I spend too much money. So, yeah, we have to be selective and targeted when we look for that specific data. Yeah, EBM data. I swear it's EBM. I remember this from previous testimony. EBM, not EBN. Yeah. They said here, is there a reason why it wasn't obtained? Yeah, that's why. And I'm just trying to see if there's anything else about the. I think that was about it for the EBM one. Let me see if I've got anything else here. No, that's not what we want to talk about. That's talking about something stupid. Sorry, guys. I'm just like sifting through a couple of notes to see what else we can talk about. Hmm. Alright, give me 1 sec. I wanna switch to a different set of notes. 1 minute. Alright. No, we did that. Let's go here. Alright. I'm actually gonna do something different. If anyone has a question from the coverage they saw today and you wanna know more about a specific point, I will look at my notes and then give you a deeper answer. So if you saw something today in another piece of media or something and you wanna know more about a certain topic, I'll do that. Um, yeah, because like, the rest of it's just cross-examination about, I think, mostly stuff we've heard before. Yeah, I think most of this stuff we've heard possibly in other evidence. I think I brought you the stuff about the cell phone data. Yeah, I think that's really, duh, 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 duh. Yeah, I can't. Yeah. So Eppingstall continues. If I go down here, what did we do? Yeah, I really think that's almost all of it today. It was a okay, we can talk about this actually. All right, here. So he asks him, yeah. So he says basically, wait, no, hold on. Actually, I'm just gonna cut it. I think that's basically all I really wanted to talk about tonight. I'll do, if you give me half an hour, I will run through one of my other documents and just minimize it even more, and I'll make a separate video and we'll do Erin Patterson's police interview, but I want half an hour to just run through some things. Was there any prior incident or history so you might have had no, I've not heard anything about a motive. If you go to opening statements day one, in prosecution, the prosecution said at the end of, so that's Dr. Nanette Rogers, SC. Day one, she said, at the end of this trial, the jury and everyone else may be left wanting for an explanation and a motive. So it's up to the jury. They're the ones who have to find the truth here, and that's sort of their thing. But what I mean is, was there evidence? I think that was yesterday. So we heard about the SIM card swap yesterday in the IME data. and that was, yes, I think we covered that on yesterday's show. So yeah, we did actually do that yesterday. So basically, what they showed us was like this giant telecommunications log, and it detailed like there was one phone and it ran from like 4 years ago, and then in July it switched and it changed to a different number, which what they call phone B. So they were looking for phone A, and the SIM card for phone A, but they never found it, and they were trying to demonstrate that this other phone had been active for like 4 years, and then they say I think it was like the 11th of July 2023. This other one, phone B, becomes active with this new number, and they were like, well, that's and they show it runs up. I think it became active and then was put into the phone on the 5th of August. On the 5th of August, it got put into a mobile phone and then activated or something like that. I know we did it in yesterday's episode. Mike, I can't answer any of those questions, but if you have something specific from today's evidence, I can answer that. Oh, you're in a meeting? Sorry, I keep going to cough. Hold on. How did they know about phone A? Actually, we might have an explanation about that today. Hold on, let me look through my notes. They did talk a little bit about phone A today. Where is it? It was down the end here. No, that's not it. Let me see if I can find the bit where they talk about it today, if they did. I can't quite remember if it was today or yesterday. No, that's about the search warrant. That's about the Kunwara transfer station. No, that's something completely different. Yeah. I think it must have been yesterday that let me see, let me grab the notes from yesterday. Let me go into my note file. So yesterday would have been this one. All right. Let me see if I can find it out of yesterday's one. Let me scroll down. It should be pretty far down. If you want to know about phone A. This looks about right. IME numbers. So they talk about these ones. I don't know why I keep coughing. Come on. My chest keeps going to cough, and I'm like, no, don't cough into the mic. Come on. Don't I forget it's the same origin data. They talk about here. So I can tell you that the way they track these is there's a publicly available website that they put the IME number into, and that's how they find out what device it was with. Identify. So yeah, come on, chest. They said, did you identify that as ultimately the mobile phone that Miss Patterson handed to Detective Senior Sergeant Luke Farrell on 5th of August? And he said, yeah, so it's phone B as we've been referring to throughout this matter. So that's the one that got handed to the police during the search warrant. And let me see here, the location. They talk about that there was a factory reset at Spencer Street, which is the homicide squad in Docklands. And there's a registered in Brazil. Yeah. Did you identify another phone number that was registered in the accused name? And they said, was that number redacted? And he says, yep, correct. They said, did you obtain the call charges for that number? He says, yes, we did. This is Eppingstall, by the way. And they say, we actually went back to 2019 for those call charges, so they were comprehensive. So they say, yep. They heard evidence from Dr. Sorrell that he was provided cold charges from the 1st of January 2019 all the way to mid August 2023. Is that right? And he says, yes, that is right. Some 4.5 years worth of records. And that's the one they consider phone A. So phone A had the 4.5 years of data. Does it tell us how they became aware of it? I think it just says that they did become aware of a second phone. It wouldn't surprise me if the way they became aware of it was through investigation of other people, because they spoke to other family members, Simon, other people. They have telecommunications databases that they can access. They can search your name and see what numbers you've registered in your name before. Like, I feel like there was a few different ways that they could have found it, if that makes sense. I'm just trying to see if they give us a reason. Yeah, so he just says here. Yeah, I don't think they actually tell us. Ultimately, the mobile phone that Miss Patterson handed to the detectives, that was phone B. Did you become aware that there was a second phone number in the accused name? And they say yes, and that's phone A. You've given evidence that you identified that did not appear to be in use or was connected, only ever connected. So they're saying here, so the one that they actually confiscated and took to Docklands, that one first got turned on the 11th of July 2023, according to Eppingstall. And they say, did you identify another phone number? And that's phone A. That's the one that goes back to 2019. They said, "What did that reveal?" So they put the IMEI number into the website. They said that revealed that the phone that was phone A was a Samsung Galaxy A23. I don't think they, unless I missed it, I don't think they actually tell us. I think they just say they became aware of a second phone number that was not the phone B that they were given in the search warrant. So it doesn't seem like they never found phone A. No. They went back and conducted a second search warrant in November looking for that specific phone. That's what we heard in evidence, but they never found it. So, thanks, Tamara. I appreciate it. Hey, Zen, how are you? I don't know who that is. Um, I have no idea who that is. I can just tell you that there are witnesses that are there. There's witnesses that are family members, obviously, because they're witnesses. Um, I don't think I've seen anyone. I don't think I've seen anyone. How can I phrase this properly? I don't think I've seen anyone who's given evidence with that name. That's how I'm going to word that. Hey, Anne, how are you? Drinking coffee at the moment? Sorry, it's a bit slow tonight. Today's coverage was a little slow. I promise. We were sitting there trying to take notes, going, how do we write an article out of this? That's sort of what it felt like today. It was that kind of day. All right. I'm actually going to leave it there. I'm going to cut for about 25 minutes. I'm going to go work on my other set of notes for about 25 minutes, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to do the other video I want to do. Okay? I want to do the Erin Patterson police investigation, but I need about 25 minutes to work through those notes again. I want to have a look at it. Zen said, I remember them saying that a phone. Yeah, I don't want to give out the numbers. I do. I have all the numbers for all the phones. I just not sure if I'm supposed to be giving them out or not. Maybe someone could have. That's what I like. I think if you look at the logical conclusion, is that that phone number was known to the family and including Simon. So the easiest place, like they said in their evidence, I've not heard this in evidence. So I want to make that really clear. But Simon handed over his phone twice to police. Once early on in August, and then he came back in early September and handed it over again. So yeah, I need to. I don't know what's going on with this me wanting to like congestion or coughing thing. Um, I would say it would be a logical conclusion that the number was probably just in his phone. I mean, where else would you find it, right? He would have to have talked to her on that number several times. So it doesn't make any sense to me that it would come from anywhere else. I mean, you heard them say that number was active for like 4 years. So in 4 years, a lot of people, and they said it was like they showed us the data pages for it. It was just thousands of pages full of like SMS calls, data, MMS, and stuff like that. So that number was quite active. I need a good loogie. I don't know what I need. Maybe some decongestants or something. I think just walking around in the cold, it's been really messing with me. Because it's freezing in Melbourne right now. You need a hot good loogie. I do. Um, have a swig of bourbon. I don't think I have any alcohol in the house. Like I don't keep alcohol in my house very often. Yeah, all right. Give me 25 minutes. I just want to rework these notes one more time and I'll be back. So we'll do another one in about 25. I don't really have anywhere to go tomorrow. I'll be at court, but we're going to get booted out for we're going to get booted out pretty quick tomorrow. I reckon we're going to be back before 1 o'clock for sure. Just let me double check something here. Yeah, so let me go rework these notes for it might be shorter than 25 minutes, but I just want to put them in a different format. So yeah, give me until about 10:20 Melbourne time and I'll be back. But that's really it from today. There was a little bit like other random bits and pieces. I mean, it's stuff mostly you would have heard before in other evidence. A lot of it is especially when you get things like cross-examination, at least a lot of it is stuff that's already been brought up. Yeah, I can't do that. Yeah, I'm going to leave it there for day 23. It was one of those funny days where we had a lot of stop and starting throughout the day, and there was only one witness, and it sort of got shrunk down due to various factors. So, a hot toddy, I don't even know what that is. Garlic will help. Hydration, maybe hydration. Eno, yeah. Yeah, I think I got trapped air. I think that's what it is. It's really annoying. So I'll be back in 20 minutes. We'll do the police interrogation, all of it for the very first time. For the very first time. I don't think I've ever talked about it on this channel before. So you're going to get a world first, a world first. I don't think I have any whiskey, but I'll do something. All right. It's 10 o'clock now. I'll see you in about 20 minutes, maybe 15 minutes, okay? And we'll do the Erin Patterson investigation interview. All right? Yes. All right. 15, 20 minutes. All right. I'll see you then. Bye.